Okay, so uh, Peter and Vola just dropped off all the marionettes at the town library, and Peter ran into the little boy that he had seen previously at the baseball field. And so he kind of made peace with that little boy now. So we're going to continue on with chapter 24 and see what happens with Peter, if he's going to catch that mail bus or not. Inside, the librarian was unpacking the last crate. Half a dozen kids had grouped up, and they gaped and grinned as she lifted out each marionette. Vola stood off to the side, watching. She turned to leave when she caught sight of Peter. Peter stabbed out a crutch to block her. "Condition number 3?" he asked, with a glance back to the librarian. Vola gave him a look that was half irritation, half grudging defeat. She turned back to the librarian. "Oh, I forgot to say, Bee, that I'll come back once a week to teach the kids how to use the marionettes." Bee Booker, the librarian, smiled, a slow smile that reminded Peter of melted caramel. "That'd be awfully nice," said Bee. Vola set out for the door, but Peter blocked her path again. Vola threw her palms up. "What now?" she asked. He raised 2 fingers. "What?" "Oh, for goodness." "Fine." And she walked back to the table. "Bee, I'll be here twice a week. I'll come twice a week to teach the kids." The librarian broke out into a wide grin. "The children would love that. Be good to see you more, too. Vola, maybe we could go for that coffee afterward." A little girl with a fountain of beaded pigtails tugged on Vola's overalls. She pointed to the elephant. "How do you make him dance?" she asked. Peter held his breath, but instead of lecturing the girl about figuring things out for herself, Vola crouched down to study the elephant. Peter noticed that the movement was smooth with the prosthesis leg. She had an ankle joint now, such a simple thing, to be able to flex. How much had she given up? "What makes you think he wants to dance?" Vola asked the little girl. "He has red toenails like mine." The little girl wiggled her toes in her sandals. Then her hand drifted up to stroke the feathers at Vola's neck. Vola startled at the touch, and Peter held his breath again, but she only reached out and patted the girl's own necklace of yellow pop beads. Then she pointed to the clock over the desk, which read almost 11. "Well, I've got something important to do right now, but I'll be back in half an hour. If you're still here, we'll figure out how to make him dance." By the time they grabbed Peter's pack and crossed the street, the bus was already idling at the station. While Vola went to the ticket counter, Peter made his way to the group waiting to board. A shiver of current scurried up his spine. It was the same thrill that juiced him every time an umpire called, "Play ball." Vola handed Peter the ticket. Lying in his hand, it looked too small for the power that it contained. "I'm going to get there, and I'm going to find him. Thank you." The bus door cranked open, and Vola leaned in. She pointed a warning finger at the driver. "Robert, this boy is family. He's been visiting, and now he's going home. You see that he gets there safe and sound." She stepped away, and an elderly couple began their shaky climb aboard the bus. Peter shifted his backpack and crutches. He took a step toward the bus, and then he turned back. "I'm family?" "That's as true a thing as I've ever known. Now, get on that bus," she said. The steps were tall, but Peter hoisted himself up with ease. He took a seat up front and gave Vola a thumbs up through the grimy glass window. He was strong now. He was prepared. But when the air brakes hissed their release, he gripped the armrest. It was going to hurt a lot to watch her getting smaller and smaller. Vola motioned for him to slide the window open when the bus growled into gear. "Boy," she called up as it lurched away from the curb, "I'm going to leave the porch door open for you." Oh, you've made a connection. Okay, so we'll start chapter 25, and I'm not sure how far we'll get, but we'll try. Back to Pax. Pax dug. Since moving Runt up the gorge, Pax and Bristle had taken turns guarding him, a pact of protection. They would be his strong hind legs. They would be his ears. Runt was safe and sleeping inside the abandoned groundhog's den that Bristle had enlarged for him. Still, Pax felt anxious. Something was coming. He dug as he kept watching in front of the burrow. The pads of his paws were toughened, and they did not bleed. When Bristle returned from hunting, she dropped a chipmunk in front of him. Pax turned away. Although he had not eaten since the cheese 2 nights before, he would not take food from Bristle or Runt. Bristle buried the chipmunk and then stretched out beside the den for her watch. Pax left to pace the perimeter of the clearing again. The location was good, although it was near the army encampment. It was high enough above to feel safe from the exploding earth down near the river. Juniper bushes ringing the clearing would provide cover. More important, they would help disguise the fox's scents. A short distance away, a clear spring trickled from a cleft rock, and the grass was full of game. But something was wrong. Something was coming. Pax bounded the short distance through the trees to the ridgeline above the encampment. The encounter with his boy's father had left him too wary to attempt another raid, but at the same time he was more drawn to the camp. The man's motion, that sweeping kick of his boot through the doorway with its conflicting messages of goodwill and threat, had reminded him that he needed to protect his boy. And if the man lived at the camp, surely Peter would find his way there soon. It was mid-afternoon. Pax watched the warsick spread out along the riverbank, rolling more wires, digging more holes, and burying more dark boxes under the hot sun. The odor of their sweat was spiked with a new aggression. The danger he sensed was more immediate than that. It was more primitive. He ran back and paced the clearing again. When he saw Runt emerge blinking from the den, Pax hurried over to examine him. No blood seeped from the wound, and it smelled clean. Runt ignored the meal Bristle dug up for him. Pax could see that he was thirsty. "I will take him to the spring." Bristle began to follow, but then she sat back down and merely watched intently as they left. When they returned, Runt tumbled back into the den. Pax settled himself in front of it. The groundhog's burrow entrance felt too large, too open, and he felt better when he kept guard there. But Bristle called him. "Come with me. Watch." She picked her way into the grass, paw over silent paw, head low and cocked to the ground. Pax followed as carefully. In the middle of the clearing, she stopped short, ears perked forward, and shot a quick glance back at him. Pax heard it. A light scurrying under the netting of dried grass that matted the ground. Bristle tracked it as if she could see its movement. Then she sprang into the air and jacked straight down, paws over her nose, and emerged with a mouse in her jaws. She ate it in a few bites and then angled back across the clearing, searching again. Now she dropped to her haunches, head cocked to her left. "Now you," she said. Pax listened until he felt sure he had located the tunneling rustle. A high leap, and then he tucked his paws over his nose to dive just as Bristle had. He landed hard, but no mouse. He turned away from Bristle to huff out the dirt. Bristle stalked off. Pax followed, his head hanging, until she perked her ears toward another faint scurrying. Again she backed away, while Pax tried the pounce, and again no mouse. Bristle studied Pax as he pawed the dirt from his cheeks. "Follow me," she said. Pax padded behind her until she stopped abruptly and dropped to a crouch. Before them was a hole in the thatch. It was warm with the fresh scent of many mice. Bristle warned him to stay back. "Don't move, just watch." Bristle crept forward. In front of the hole, she dropped and laid her head on her paws. She closed her eyes to slits, and her whole body relaxed as if in a deep sleep. Pax was surprised. He had thought she was still teaching him to hunt. He stood. Bristle tapped a warning with her singed tail. "Stay." So Pax settled again. For many moments nothing happened, and then Pax caught the faintest stirring at the opening of the hole. A quivering nose tested the air and then retreated. Another long moment, and the mouse reappeared. In a moment, its movements were so light, so alert, that Pax knew it was a whisker away from flight. Bristle didn't stir, except for the flicker of an eyelid as she cut a warning glance at Pax. The mouse emerged and retreated twice more, and then, assured that the fox was asleep, It made a run for cover. Bristle's swift paw swept out and raked the doomed mouse to her jaws. Pax understood. Bristle retreated to guard Runt, and Pax trotted into the clearing, eager to find the telltale hole that would allow him to try the move himself. He found one beside a rotting log and drew in the thick scent of a colony of field mice. He settled himself a 4 legs reach away. His excitement made it hard to stay perfectly still, but at last a mouse came to the entrance and tested the air. Like Bristle's quarry, the mouse darted back and in at the sight of the fox. Like Bristle's quarry, it re-emerged until it was convinced Pax was asleep, and then it made a run for it. Pax wasn't as quick as Bristle, but he managed to knock the mouse over, and as it scrambled to its feet, he swiped at it again, and he caught his first prey. It was a small meal, but each bite sent a hot current through Pax's body. The mouse's life now merged with his own. His muscles brimmed with energy. He sprang up and tore a joyful path around the clearing, running by Bristle in a blaze of red fur. She got to her feet to watch. Pax sped by again, scarcely skimming the ground, but it wasn't celebration enough. He was so excited that he had caught his first prey. In the center of the clearing stood an old, crooked, sweet gum tree. Its lowest limbs reached out over a hollow. Its upper branches glinted blue with feeding blue jays. Pax flew at the trunk. He scrambled easily into the first low branch and balanced there. Then, step by cautious step, he began to walk along the length of the branch. Leaves rustled around him in a welcome like fragrant green stars. Through them, he looked down in astonishment. The world had changed. From this vantage point, he could see through the ridge-lined trees to the encampment and the river in the distance. The meadow grasses, which just a moment ago had brushed his shoulders, now seemed flattened to a broad green bowl. Blue jays flew down to scold him. Pax recalled Runt's flight. He coiled himself. Then he sprang, stretching out and out, feeling the air ruffle his belly fur. He landed lightly and threw his head back and barked his happiness. This new world was his. He could travel through it, and he could feed himself on its bounty whenever he wanted. He was part of it all, free, but not alone. Pax hurried to where he had buried the peanut butter jar and unearthed it. He carried it back and dropped it in front of Bristle and Runt, who were drowsing at the burrow entrance in the last rays of the afternoon sun. Both of them came alive instantly at the strange scent. Bristle was on her feet first. She nudged the jar and jumped back at its surprising roll. She sniffed it all around and tested it with her tongue. One taste was all it took. Bristle locked the jar between her paws and began lapping greedily, cleaning out the top half in seconds. She squirmed her snout in deeper. Pax had done the same thing. "Be careful, you can get trapped." Too late. Bristle jumped out. She thrashed her head from side to side, but the jar was wedged on tightly. She hopped onto her hind legs, trying with both forepaws to clamp off the jar, and tumbled over and over. Runt watched in amazement. His sister had never lost her composure before. Pax approached, offering to help, but Bristle dashed away. She would do this herself. Finally, she rolled onto her back and pried the peanut butter jar off her face with her hind legs. She shook herself and stalked back, her head and tail high. She dropped down beside Pax and began cleaning herself. Bristle had never sat this close to him before, with her flank pressed comfortably against his own. Her scent had never been this friendly. A streak of brown on Bristle's white cheek caught his attention. Without thinking of the consequences, he stretched out and licked the peanut butter off her face. And Bristle allowed it. Pax cleaned her ears and her throat and her muzzle, and after a moment Bristle returned the care. Cheek to cheek, the two foxes groomed each other. Bristle stopped to sniff Pax deeply. "You don't smell of humans any more." Pax didn't respond. He got to his feet to test the air. Something dangerous had entered the clearing with the dusk. An animal scent he didn't recognize, but feared. It was gone as quickly as it had appeared, but Pax howled at Grunt. "Get inside the den now," he howled to Runt. So, sounds like Pax and Bristle are now friends.